Hello, welcome back to Some Things Matter. I am your host, Jessie Webster. I've always wanted to say that, so that's what I said. We're doing it very old school, I guess you could say. My mic is not working, so it is what it is. But I still wanted to film today because I've honestly been working on this video for forever. For like a month or so, maybe a little bit over that. I've refilmed it a billion times and I just haven't been able to get it to where I want it to be. And I'm hopeful that today is the day. I am really excited to talk about this. I'm going to talk to you guys about my testimony, how I came to know the Lord, what's happened since then. I would like to start out by just a little disclaimer that a huge part of my story includes mental health issues, so depression and thoughts of death are going to be mentioned throughout the episode, hopefully in a way that is constructive and helpful. But nonetheless, if that's something that you can't listen to right now, totally understand. Just wanted to throw it out there. So let's dive in. I'm really excited about this. I just want to give you guys a little bit of a backstory for who I am and kind of set the stage for this little story I'm going to tell you. So I grew up in a small town. Well, my family kind of moved around, but the majority of my childhood was spent in a small town in Arkansas, where the only thing that you do is play in the creek in the backyard. Literally, I'm not kidding. That's what we did. And so it was like a very sweet, naive, sheltered life that I thoroughly enjoyed. My family went to church. I grew up with very Christian family. So that was just kind of my life, and I loved it. There wasn't a part of me that was like annoyed by the church or anything like that. I think that there were definitely, I've always been inquisitive, so I always had questions of why we did what we did, because we did some weird things. But yeah, for the most part, I can say that I was really happy with the atmosphere that I was brought up in, and really lucky. So let's fast forward a little bit to when I was around the age of 13, 14, 15. My dad had been sick for several years at this point, and he decided to take a treatment that he believed was his only option, basically. With his specific illness, there weren't very many treatment plans. This was basically the only one, and it was a little bit risky, but it's exactly what he felt like he needed to do. So unfortunately, it ended up being too much for his body, and he did pass away when I was 15. And I would say, obviously, this was a defining moment in my life. Prior to that, I just noticed recently that there's a definite contrast in, as you would expect too, like this is not novel, but there's a definite contrast in my life perspective prior to this and my life perspective after, even to this day, where I just don't recognize how I used to process life, mainly because I was so young and I didn't know to be afraid of things, and know to anticipate that bad things could happen. I actually remember during the process of the doctors telling us that my dad wasn't going to make it much longer, I remember like just being in complete denial. I remember thinking, like, this just doesn't happen to people like me. Like, it's going to be a close call. It's going to be like, oh, it's going to be like an interesting story. But he's not actually going to die, because that kind of stuff just doesn't happen to people like me. And I would repeat that to myself over and over and over and over again, up until literally the day that he passed away. And I think that has just been really interesting for me to see, because I would say I was very naive and optimistic and like blissfully ignorant prior to this happening, and now I have the tendency to go to the other extreme of thinking like only bad things happen to me, and I think that formed over the course of time too, because it just seems like bad things happen back to back to back. And during that time, a couple months after my dad passed, my grandpa passed away, and so it was just like people in my life just kept dropping like flies, and my perspective on life started to change of like, no, I guess I just am one of those people where only bad things, like, or not only bad things, but I would just anticipate the worst thing would probably happen to me. Like if there was a scenario where this could happen or this could happen, I was probably betting on the bad thing happening to me at that point. And I think, you know, during this time, I'm a teenager, but I'm also, so I have a lot of complex feelings and emotions, and a very distorted worldview, but adding to that a deep grieving of my dad and my grandpa, and just it was a very dark time for me. I definitely don't look back to those years fondly at all. They were horrible. And I just remember that's when I really started to struggle with understanding the point of life, and I started to grow very depressed and very reclusive, where I just didn't feel like it was safe to love anyone because everyone left eventually, whether they wanted to or not. So I didn't really engage with my family very much. I had no friends, and that's the way I felt like it was necessary to keep it that way. And I lived my life like that for the next few years. It was very lonely and it was very sad, but it was me surviving. And I was able to go, my sister invited me to come live with her for a summer just to get away and to shake things up a little bit. And so I went to live with her for the summer when I was 16, and that's when I realized that you can't really escape the thoughts and the baggage that you're carrying with you. You're carrying it. It will go wherever you go. And I just faced that reality there and realized that sorry, I gotta get comfortable. I realized that it just went with you everywhere you went. At that point, I was, like I mentioned, I was very depressed, but I was also self-harming because I was consumed with this numbness that was just all over me, and I wanted the numbness. I thought I needed the numbness because it was protecting me, but at the same time, I had this craving for feeling something. So I would literally carry razors with me everywhere I went. And I remember being in the school bathroom, like just locked myself in there, trying not to like let people hear me sob while I'm, anyways, you get the picture. I think you have to acknowledge the depths of where you were led to in order to acknowledge the grasp that they held on your life. So I paint this graphic picture because I think that not only do I need to acknowledge where I was, but I think that it's good to, as a testimony, to share with others who may be in denial or may just need to hear that someone else was at a dark place as well. So anyways, this is the context of my mindset during this time. I'm sitting on my sister's front porch contemplating the whole idea of life and what is life, and I have narrowed down my questions into two possibilities. So either, well, let me say, those two possibilities are under the umbrella of my understanding that this world was created by something. It just has never made sense to me that it could have happened from nothing. That like logically doesn't make sense to me, because when you look at nature, it's so incredibly detailed, but then it's also so codependent on itself and each other, and like the ecosystem doesn't survive without this one small element of something else. Like, how does that just happen? It doesn't. That doesn't just happen. So I've always had the understanding that there was a creative being, right? Like, something created this. Now, did that something create this for entertainment purposes, just to do it because he's good at creating things? Or, and like he wants he has no interference, he wants nothing. It's literally just like a game. So that there's that possibility. Or there's a possibility that that whoever created the world that we're living in did it because he actually loves what he created, and he wants to know his creation, and he wants his creation to know him in a mutual relationship. And these two ideas are at the forefront of my brain, and I'm trying to decide which I think is more plausible, because these two different ideas require two very different lifestyles, right? Like, if the former, if it's a God who does not care, and does not have any thought of his creation other than passing thoughts, maybe, if that, then there is no point, and I'm not willing to participate in somebody else's entertainment at the expense of my whole being. Like, I was miserable, and fully understood how difficult life can be. And to me, if there was no greater meaning, then I was ready to not be participating anymore, I guess you could say. But if there was a chance that there was greater meaning and a sort of purpose for my life, then I felt like it was at least worth it to test it out and see. Because if there was a God who created this, who cared about me, I should at least try to get to know him and give him a chance, right? Like, just show me what you got, sort of thing. And if that didn't work out, then I could always go to this one. But if I go to this one first, I would never really know about the God who cares, because I wouldn't be here. Anyways, so I decide in that moment that I'm just going to give it a shot. And if I give the purpose-filled life, the God who cares, a chance, maybe he has a purpose for me that's bigger than my struggle. So I ask the Lord. I say, show me what you got, basically. Show me if you have anything for me. And if you do, then I will do it. And I promise to pursue you and to get to know you and see if this is real. And the Lord met me there, and he said, okay. And he showed me his character. He showed me his grace and his love. He showed me the meaning of life, and I've never looked back. I wouldn't say that it was definitely not a like boom moment, I feel great. It was a decision, and it was hard, and it didn't make all my troubles go away, and it didn't make my my skepticism go away. It was years of me saying, okay, I think you're showing me this. I'm going to walk towards that and see what happens, time after time after time after time, until eventually I got to a point where it was undeniable what the Lord was doing in my life. It was undeniable that he was real. It was undeniable that he cared and he had a plan for me. It got to a point where I just was fully convinced, right, that the path that I had chosen was in fact the path that I was going to stay on, because it was the path that was true. And again, it's not that my struggles went away, and that's why I believed it was a struggle every single day, but I was no longer struggling alone. I knew that there was someone in the room with me. I knew that there was somebody walking me through it. It was no longer just me, and it wasn't somebody who would ever leave. It was someone who could never leave. My fears of leaning on someone, of loving someone, didn't make sense in light of this relationship, because having learned his character, I knew that he would never abandon me, and that he would always be there. So he was the one who I trusted. And during this time, I still had some struggles mentally, but I think that this newfound purpose really gave me something to focus on, to where I wasn't as consumed, I guess. I think the Lord gave me the gift of like a little breather of the depression. And so fast forward to my 20s, I decided that I need to shake up my life a little bit, and I was very spontaneous and just decided I'm going to move to Nashville, Tennessee, and I don't know why, and I don't know anybody there, and I haven't even really talked to anyone about this. I've just decided I'm doing it. Something you should know about me, I do that kind of thing a lot. So anyways, I moved to Nashville, and it's hard. Way harder than I ever expected. I didn't know anybody. I had no frame of like community, but that wasn't so concerning to me, because up until that point I never really thought that was so important anyway. And I just was like I was met with a loneliness and being very scared and feeling like a very, very small part of what to me was a big city. And I walked through this turbulent time trying to understand and trying to, again, just survive. And I definitely leaned on the Lord during this time heavily. It was actually, while I don't know if this is exactly what the Lord wanted for me, because I just sort of did it, I think that he definitely used it as a time for me to know him in a deeper way. And it took me probably 2 or 3 years to settle in and start to like feel a little bit grounded in where I was. And that is when the second wave of depression really just took over. It literally settled down on me like, I don't even know how to describe it, just like a tidal wave. Like, just all of a sudden it just consumed me. I've never felt that level of I think I've felt that level of like depression before, but never like coupled with such intense thoughts of ending my life. It was very scary. I was genuinely afraid that I would do something, so much so that I almost checked myself into a psychiatric hospital, which is no shame, and probably would have been wise for me to do. I ended up not doing that, and I ended up being okay. But it was definitely a very scary time. I connected with a therapist who is my sweet angel, Corey, and Corey was literally sent by God for me. Corey walked me through so much. I think that the Lord had, let me start by saying this. The Lord wants to be your rock, right? And the Lord meets you where you are every single time. But at some point, he wants you to grow, and he wants you to learn some hard lessons in order for you to have capacity to handle the different assignments that he has on your life. Like, he's trying to get you somewhere, right? Because he has a purpose for you. He's trying to get you somewhere. And at this point, I was solely just leaning on the Lord to take away whatever depression I was dealing with. And it was at this point when the Lord said, it's time for you to take some responsibility and work through this. So enter Corey. He teaches me how to dive deep into my life and figure out why I am struggling. What are the contributing factors to my struggles? Where do they stem from? How do I deal with that and accept that in order for it to not be such a high contributing factor to my depression, therefore lessening my depression. And through a year, maybe 2 years, I don't really remember, he was my therapist for a while. And when our sessions first started, it was just me sitting on his couch literally crying. Couldn't even hardly talk about anything. He looked at me like I was crazy, but in the kindest way. And it slowly, very slowly progressed into something that I was able to like sink my teeth into and practically put into place in my life, where I slowly came out of this fog and was able to kind of take captive my thoughts and move forward. So honestly, that sort of brings us to today. I now have the gift, which is crazy for me to look at it as a gift, but I now have the gift of experiencing the full spectrum of emotion. I have days where I'm extremely high, higher than I remember, more joyful than I ever remember feeling or experiencing ever. And I also feel deep lows and everything in between. And there's no longer a numbness to my life, which I used to think I had to have. I used to think was like essential to surviving. And now I genuinely view it as a gift that I am able to feel and feel deeply, and essentially not be a slave to those emotions. You know, like I'm grounded in something that allows me to feel the full spectrum of emotion without being shaken and without being subject to whatever that emotion is, which is the missing piece. Like, that's what I didn't know I needed this whole time, and that's what I truly never would have found if the Lord hadn't allowed me to go into such a deep dark place a couple of years ago. So the Lord hasn't taken away my depression completely. It's still there. I still go through seasons where I feel very, very low, and I think kind of what I want to move into in this story is being a bit more practical and talking about like some steps that I've taken to manage my depression. So So I think that it's helpful when we're talking about this to be able to identify when you are depressed, because you can feel really sad, and you can feel really sad for several days in a row, and it not be that you're depressed. It's that you're emotional, or as a girl you're on your period, or literally anything. But there are three key flags, I guess, that I look for. And if I notice all three of those are present at the same time, within the same week, then I recognize, okay, I think I'm in a depressive state right now. So one of those would be the feeling of just your brain is foggy. I don't know how to describe it, but you just feel like sort of numb. You don't feel happy, you don't feel sad, you just are like existing and kind of going through the motions of life, unaware. Another one would be that I don't ever want to be around people and I just want to be alone. Now, that being said, I am an introvert, so I do recharge alone and I do need that. But it's way different when you're recharging because you have been very social and you know that you need to just take a moment to be alone. That's one thing. It's a whole other thing to need to be alone just because you're hiding, or just because you don't want to be around people, but there's no reason for it. It's not like you've overextended yourself. You're just hiding. And the third one would be not willing to be productive. So if I notice that I'm like I want to be alone, but it's not because I have a project I need to work on. I want to read, I want to do art, I just want to, sit and play with my dog. Like there's nothing in me that wants to be productive. I just want to sit in my bed and like just exist there. That's a red flag to me. That's saying that I am in a state of mind that is like closer to a depressive state of mind. So what I do when I'm feeling, when I've noticed that this is where I'm at, the first thing I do is probably pretty obvious. I take it to God. I recognize right off the bat, Lord, I think I'm feeling depressed, and I need you to meet me here. I need you to guide me through it. I need you to have grace on me. I need you to encourage me and be my comforter, and I need you to help me walk through it. That is key. If that's the only thing you do when you're in this situation, then it's by far the most beneficial thing you could do. My relationship with God is my number one defense against mental health issues. Absolutely. Another thing that I've learned that is so helpful is how important community is in when you're struggling with this type of thing. Being able to take this to my trusted community is first and foremost a blessing. Like that is something that I never would have imagined I'd have the luxury of having people in my life who I could take this stuff to. But then also being diligent in actually doing that and putting your pride aside and waving the flag of, hey, I'm really struggling with this right now. Like, could you help hold me accountable? Could you be praying for me? Could you just be aware that this is something that I'm facing right now? And that is why the Lord doesn't want us to do life alone. I'm not going to say that's why. That is one of the reasons why I believe the Lord has called us to community. It's not just because of like the church aspect of, we're all different parts of one body, but it's also because we're not meant to live life alone because it's too difficult to do it that way. it's prideful to think that you're above community. So anyways, that's all I'll say about that. I'm not going to go on a rant, but it's important. The last thing I'll say is when I'm in this state of mind, I really try to be intentional about the content that I'm consuming, because it's very easy to wallow in emotion. At least for me, I'm just the type of person who really enjoys like depth of thought and depth of art. So whenever I see like an artful song or an artful piece or an artful film or something that like depicts an emotion in me that I've never been able to present or to put into words, I enjoy that. Where I think that can be harmful is when you open up a part of you that you've never been able to fully express, and you just leave it open, and you're fully vulnerable to whatever forces want to fill in the blanks. Vulnerability in and of itself is not bad, but this type of being vulnerable, I think that it can be dangerous. I try to only listen to content or consume content that allows God to be the fill in the blank, that allows God to be the answer to that question, because otherwise I just think you're opening yourself up to other voices speaking in to you when you're at your most vulnerable point. Maybe on a good day, you could open that up and you would have the wherewithal to combat that question with an answer, or to walk through that process to find the answer in a way that you have your wits about you. But when you're vulnerable and when you're not in your right state of mind, because that is what depression is, you're not in a proper state of mind, I think that it's very dangerous. As an example of what I'm talking about, I created a playlist of songs that I'll listen to whenever I'm in this state. Songs that both acknowledge the complexity of the human emotion and the struggles we go through, but also meets that with an answer that is appropriate to my walk with the Lord. So I'll put that in the link below if you want to have a listen, or if you are just curious about what I'm trying to describe. I feel like I'm not describing it the best, but anyways, so those are my 3 ideas. Obviously the first one, in having your relationship with God being your number one defense. There's just so many scriptures to back that up. I'll put a bunch of them in the description below. But it's just so evident that the Lord wants to be your peace. He wants you to be of a sound mind. He wants you to take every thought captive. He desires for you to be well in your mind. So I take a lot of comfort in that knowledge of his character and how much he truly does care for you. So I'll put all that in the description below if you need a little reference. I just want to end this with saying that, people are going to tell you that if you pray hard enough, the Lord will take away your depression. And I just want to say, maybe God will take away my depression on this side of eternity, and maybe he won't. The point for me right now, what I have to focus on, is the fact that I'm not walking through this alone. It's an opportunity for him to walk through it with me. It's an opportunity for me to learn lessons about life and about myself and how to relate to other people and how to help other people. So I actually see it as a very valuable thing that, honestly, that the Lord has entrusted me to walk through. And would I have asked for it? Absolutely not. But is it my reality? Yes. And I trust him as my leader and my guide, and I know that he won't let me fall, and I know that he sees a picture that's bigger than what I can see. So that's it. That's all I have to say. Thanks for listening. I hope that this is I hope that this is helpful in some way. I think it's very important for us to be able to share our story, whatever your story is, because that is part of your purpose, right? Like, part of the reason why you walk through things is not just so that you grow from them, but so that others can as well. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm just gonna say a quick prayer, and then we're done. Dear Lord, thank you for meeting with us today. When I think back on your hand on my life and all the things that I know you've done, and even all the things that I haven't even seen you do, but you've saved me from, God, I sit here very humbly, and I am so thankful for who you are. I'm just thankful for your character and how you operate. I pray for anyone who is watching this or listening to this, and maybe they're experiencing some battles that they feel very overwhelmed with, God, and I pray that you would meet them where they are. God, thank you that you are our comforter, and that they can lean on you, and anything that they bring to you will never be too much for you to handle. Thank you, God. Amen. All right. Peace out.